All right, let's unpack those suitcases. We are diving deep into York, England today,
Sounds exciting.
and we're going to help plan a first-timer's trip,
A perfect place to start.
focusing on some unique and memorable spots.
Perfect. York is a city where history is sort of like layered on top of itself.
Yeah, I love that.
King George VI even said, "The history of York is the history of England."
Wow. Okay, that's a pretty high bar to set,
It is.
but it sounds fascinating. Romans, Vikings, medieval times.
Exactly. You've got it all.
Yeah.
Let's go all the way back to 71 AD when the Romans established Eboracum,
Okay.
their stronghold in the north. For 3 centuries, it was a bustling global city.
Wait, hold on. Only 2% of Roman York has been excavated.
Yeah, just 2%.
What? That's crazy. Imagine what's still hidden.
It's incredible, right?
It's wild.
But even with that small percentage, there's still so much to see.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like the city walls, you can actually walk along sections that date back to the Roman period.
Okay, that's amazing. I mean, walking along Roman walls, sign me up. And it's not even just like crumbling ruins, right? The multangular tower in the museum gardens.
Yes.
That's proof of their engineering skills.
It is. And speaking of skills, let's fast forward to the Vikings. Now,
Okay.
forget those stereotypical images of like fierce raiders.
Right.
The Vikings in York were known for their craftsmanship and trade. In fact, their influence on the city is still evident today, like in the layout and even the street names.
Hold on, streets named after Vikings.
Yes.
What kind of names are we talking about?
Many of them end in gate, which comes from the Old Norse gata, meaning road.
Interesting.
So that's a little clue about their impact on the city.
Yeah, I love those little details that make a trip really special.
Absolutely.
And for anyone who really wants to dive deep into the Viking era, you have to visit the Jorvik Viking Center.
Absolutely. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I've heard it's like stepping into a Viking village.
It is. And speaking of bringing history to life, let's not forget the medieval period.
Okay.
This is when York really came into its own. With a lot of its iconic landmarks being built.
Yeah, like those impressive city walls. Walking along them seems like a must for any visitor.
It is.
But what makes them so special? A lot of cities have old walls.
That's true, but York's walls are really well preserved. You can walk almost the entire circuit. And it's incredible to think about the people who walked those same paths centuries ago.
Oh, wow. When you say the entire circuit, how long are we talking?
About 2 hours to walk the whole loop at a leisurely pace. And along the way, you'll see these fascinating gates. They're called bars, and they each have their own unique history.
Oh, the bars. Our listeners specifically mentioned those. So they aren't just entrances, they're like landmarks.
Exactly. Take Micklegate Bar. It was traditionally the ceremonial entrance for monarchs entering the city.
Ooh, imagine those processions.
It must have been quite a sight. And each bar has its own story. Bootham Bar, for example, it still has scars from sieges during the English Civil War.
Wow, a reminder of York's tumultuous past.
It is.
So it's like a walk through history with each bar marking a different chapter. I'm starting to see why our listener was so intrigued by this.
It's a fascinating way to experience the city. And speaking of history, we can't forget about Clifford's Tower, another one of your must-sees. This imposing stone keep, it's dominated the York skyline for centuries.
It's true. And every time I see a picture of Clifford's Tower, it reminds me of something out of like Game of Thrones, that traumatic history you mentioned.
Yeah.
It's definitely written all over those walls.
You can tell it's seen some things, from Viking sieges to even a tragic massacre of Jews in the 12th century. Clifford's Tower has seen its share of turmoil.
Wow.
But it also offers breathtaking panoramic views of the city.
Oh, I bet. So wouldn't climbing to the top be the perfect way to appreciate those layers of history?
Oh, absolutely. You can see the entire city laid out before you. Glimpses of Roman walls, medieval streets, and even York Minster. It really captures the essence of York.
Okay, I am adding Climb Clifford's Tower to my to-do list.
Good choice.
Now, before we move on, our listener also mentioned the National Railway Museum.
Yes.
I'll be honest, I'm not a huge train buff, but I am curious what makes it so special.
Well, it's not just about trains, it's about the impact they had on society, on industry,
Okay.
the world even. Trust me, even if you're not a train enthusiast, the sheer scale of the exhibits will blow you away.
Okay, you've piqued my interest. Give me an example of something even a non-trained person would enjoy.
How about Queen Victoria's royal carriage?
Oh, okay, interesting.
It's opulent, luxurious.
Now that's something I can get behind.
It is. And speaking of blending history and innovation, they also have the Mallard, which is the world's fastest steam locomotive.
The Mallard. Yeah, I've heard of that.
It's amazing, and it still holds the speed record today.
Wow. Didn't they build a special simulator for it?
They did.
Right.
And it's not your average simulator. It uses virtual reality to recreate the experience of driving the Mallard at top speed.
That's so cool.
It is.
Okay, I am officially adding the National Railway Museum to the itinerary. And who knows, maybe I'll even try that simulator.
You should.
So we've covered Roman and Viking periods, a taste of the medieval era, and even the world of railways. And it feels like we've only just scratched the surface.
Oh, we have. There's still so much more to discover.
I know, I can't wait.
From the shambles to the grandeur of York Minster.
Oh, yes.
But before we dive into those, what has stood out to you so far?
You know, it's those little details that really make York come alive.
Yeah, I agree.
The Viking street names, the stories behind the bars, that Mallard simulator.
That's what makes York so special.
Yeah,
It's a place where history isn't just something you read about, it's something you experience.
I love that.
It is.
All right, I am ready to experience more. What other treasures does York have in store?
Let's find out. Well, we've talked about the grand landmarks, but the real magic of York is, in the hidden corners. Unexpected details.
Okay.
And one place that embodies this is the shambles.
The shambles. Okay,
Yes.
I've seen pictures. Those narrow streets, cobblestones, timber-framed buildings.
Exactly.
It looks like something out of a fairy tale,
It does.
a medieval fairy tale.
It's often called the best preserved medieval street in Europe. And it's easy to see why.
Our listener mentioned loving those unique hidden stories. What stories does the shambles have to offer?
Well, for centuries, it was the heart of York's butchering trade.
Really?
Imagine those overhanging upper floors were used to store and display meat.
Okay, that's a little gruesome.
It is. But fascinating.
Yeah, I can almost picture it. The butchers working, the smells, the sound, sensory overload.
It would have been. And while there are no butchers there today, you can still find some unique shops and businesses.
Oh, cool.
They capture the spirit of the shambles.
So it's a place where, like, the past and present blend together.
Exactly. And speaking of blending the past and present, let's talk about something that might surprise you.
Okay, what's that?
York's chocolate-making heritage.
Chocolate. Seriously,
Ah.
I never would guess that.
It's true. York was once a major center for chocolate production.
Huh.
Some of the most famous names in British chocolate, like Roundtrees and Terry's, were founded right here in York.
Wow, I had no idea. So what can our chocolate-loving listener expect to find in York?
Well, there's a fantastic chocolate story attraction.
Okay.
You can learn all about the history of chocolate making, from the Quaker families who pioneered the industry to the iconic brands.
So is there a chance to, sample some of this delicious history?
Absolutely. Chocolate tastings, demonstrations by master chocolatiers. You can even create your own chocolate treats.
Wow, now that's what I call immersive.
It is.
It's like a unique twist on historical sightseeing.
You're right. And it's a reminder that history isn't just about battles and monarchs. It's also about everyday life. The things we eat and drink, the industries that shaped our world.
I love that. Speaking of shaping the world, let's go back to the National Railway Museum for a moment.
Okay, sure.
You mentioned Queen Victoria's carriage and the Mallard simulator. What else can our listener expect to see there?
Well, they have a fantastic collection of locomotives from different eras, including Stephenson's rocket, one of the very first steam engines.
Wow, to see the rocket up close, that's like looking at the grandfather of modern trains.
It is quite a sight.
It must be.
And they also have exhibits dedicated to the impact of the railways, the social and cultural impact,
Yeah.
like the rise of tourism and the development of railway towns.
So it's not just about the trains themselves. It's about the stories they tell, the connections, the way they transform society.
Exactly. And for a seasoned traveler like our listener, I think that'll be fascinating.
Absolutely. And speaking of fascinating, we haven't talked about York Minster yet.
Ah, the Minster.
That towering Gothic cathedral that dominates the skyline.
It's a masterpiece of architecture, a symbol of York's spiritual heritage.
I've heard it's the largest Gothic cathedral in Northern Europe.
It is.
What's it like to actually stand inside?
Awe-inspiring. The soaring ceilings, the intricate carvings, the sheer sense of history. It's humbling.
And what about the history of the Minster itself? It must have some stories to tell.
Oh, absolutely. It's been a place of worship for over 1,000 years. And it's witnessed everything from Viking raids to royal coronations. It even survived a devastating fire in the 1980s.
A fire. That must have been heartbreaking.
It was, but the community came together to restore it. It's a testament to the enduring spirit of York.
Wow. So it sounds like the Minster is more than just a building. It's a symbol of resilience, faith, community.
Exactly. And for a traveler who appreciates those deeper connections, a visit is a must.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
Medieval streets, chocolate factories, steam engines, soaring cathedrals.
From the ancient to the modern.
But there's one last thing I want to touch on. York's reputation for being, well, haunted.
Ah, yes. The ghost stories.
Practically woven into the fabric of the city.
They are.
Our listener mentioned enjoying a good ghost story.
Oh, good.
What are some of the spookiest spots?
Well, there's the Golden Fleece, one of York's oldest pubs.
Okay.
It's said to be home to many ghostly characters.
A haunted pub.
Yes!
That's amazing. What kind of ghosts are we talking about?
Everything from former landlords to highwaymen, even a Roman soldier.
Okay, now that's a diverse clientele. Sounds like the perfect spot for a spooky pint.
It is. And there are plenty of other haunted locations, too. Ancient ruins, medieval alleyways. There are even ghost walks that take you through the city's most haunted spots.
I'm definitely adding a ghost walk to my itinerary. It's a fun way to experience history from a different perspective.
Exactly. A reminder that history isn't just facts and figures. It's about the stories, the legends, the mysteries. It makes a place come alive.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what's one thought that's sticking with you about York?
For me, it's the way York manages to be both ancient and modern, traditional and innovative.
I love that.
It embraces its history without being trapped by it.
It's like they've found that perfect balance between honoring the past and looking towards the future.
It really is.
And for our listener who's looking for a destination that's both, deep and varied,
Yeah,
York really hits the mark.
it does.
It's like a choose-your-own adventure through history.
It is. And it's not just the big name attractions, it's the unexpected discoveries. You're wandering down a street and suddenly you stumble upon a hidden courtyard.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier those Viking street names ending in gate.
Right.
I'm just imagining getting lost in that maze of medieval streets.
Yeah, it's easy to do. And don't forget about the tea rooms.
Ah, yes.
York is famous for its afternoon tea.
It's true.
A perfect way to take a break from all that exploring.
Oh, those scones with clotted cream and jam. And a perfect cup of tea.
It's the best.
It's like a ritual.
It is. And speaking of pace, York is a very walkable city.
Walkable. Okay, that's great news.
It is.
No need to worry about, public transportation.
Exactly.
Just lace up those walking shoes and go.
As you walk, you'll notice the city's character, from medieval architecture to the vibrant street art.
It's like a living, breathing tapestry of history and culture.
It is.
With so much to see and do, what would you say is the best way to experience York? Is there, a particular approach you'd recommend?
I think it's important to, approach it with a sense of curiosity.
Yeah.
Be willing to get lost in the moment. Don't be afraid to, wander off the beaten path, talk to a local, just enjoy the atmosphere.
Yeah, I love that. It's not about checking off a list. It's about immersing yourself in the experience.
Exactly.
Let yourself be surprised.
And New York is the perfect destination for that.
Yeah, it really is.
With its rich history, charming streets, and of course, its warm hospitality.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up our deep dive into York, what's one piece of advice you'd give to our listener planning their trip?
Don't overplan.
Yeah, good one.
Give yourself time to wander, to discover, to just be present. York is a city that rewards those who, take their time.
That's some great advice. And for our listener who's eager to dive into history, uncover hidden stories, and experience a place that's both fascinating and delightful,
Yes.
York seems like the perfect choice.
I'd say too.
So happy travels.
Happy travels.
And may your journey to York be filled with wonder and discovery.
Absolutely.